Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this very important and interesting session with a very hot topic about generative AI tools, future, risks, and challenges with these tools. And we have three great speakers today. We wanted to discuss some of these challenges, risks, um, and have some discussions about the future of these interesting tools, which we may work with them every day in our daily life. So, welcome everyone, the audience and the speakers. Thank you for your time. My name is Siamak Aram. I'm Associate Professor of Computer Science and Data Analytics at Harrisburg University, and I teach mostly the AI-related courses, big data, cloud computing, deep learning, and machine learning courses. So we will have three parts for this session, this webinar. The first part, I will ask everyone to introduce themselves, and then I will ask a couple of questions from the speakers. We will have a discussion first, and then I will open the floor for the audience if they have any comment, any question about the discussion we have today. So I'm gonna ask Mr. Trevor Johnson from Google to introduce himself, please.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Siamak. My name is Trevor Johnson. I'm the head of customer engineering at Google Public Sector for our U.S. Central SLED organization. My team covers 19 states, both state, local, and educational institutions contained therein, really helping them to solve the world's hardest problems. Whether it's as small as, hey, we don't know how to work with this paperwork, all the way up to we need a new unemployment system, or we need a new way to connect our educators and our learners. Solving those problems and mapping problems and opportunities to technology.
Thank you so much, and welcome to this webinar. And I'm going to ask Kartik Kotamsti to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, CMAC. Hello, everyone. I'm Kartik Kodamsedi. I'm a customer engineer with Google Cloud based in Austin, supporting a few different states in the Midwest. And I'm specialized in solving some data and analytics challenges for educators and the state and local governments. And excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Now, Mr. Jameson Rhodes, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Jameson Rotz. I'm the founder and CEO of Nearly Human AI. We're a small company in the Harrisburg area. We've been in business for about almost 12 years now. And in the last 10 years, we've been dedicated to working in the natural language processing space. We serve the DoD and the public sector, as well as banks, clean energy company, manufacturing, all using language modeling to automate processes within the industry. And I want to thank everybody for having me here today as well.
Welcome, and thank you for the introduction. So, Trevor, I'm going to start with you with the first question. As a thought leader and advocate in the cloud and emerging technology spaces, what are some of the key challenges you see in adoption and implementation of these tools, BART, ChatGPT, generative AI tools, with the public sector?
Great question, CMX. So I would say there's three main pillars that I think are important when we look at challenges here. The first one is understanding. I'd say the second one is really the data, understanding that this is what the technology is, understanding that you need data in place. And I'd say the final one is really the security and privacy behind it, which I think is going to be a pivotal part of our conversation today. So looking at those three pillars, understand the technology. This is something we see in any transformative technology that comes out. We saw this with calculators when they came out. We saw this with steam-powered electricity when they came out. So helping understand and research technology. I challenge everybody here to have the curiosity to explore, understand what is the technology, where can it be implemented, where does it make sense, and also where does it not make sense. Understanding within the market, what is this offering versus what is this other offering? What is a consumer offering versus what is an enterprise offering? What should I use with my data? What should I not use with my data? So, really understanding. I think that's step one. And the biggest challenge that we need to overcome together is I think we all need to educate ourselves and have that curiosity to figure out what is this and how will it be used. Say the second pillar, data. This technology is built upon data, large language models, generative AI. It needs to learn from something. It learns from data. So I think that's going to be the next challenge. I would say many organizations within the public sector, governments, educational institutions, and such forth, they're on a data journey. Some of them are further than others. Having clean data available in places where it can be accessed by these models, having quality data that they fully understand. I think another topic that'll come up later is probably bias. Understanding any biases that might exist in your data. I think that's a big topic. And then governance, understanding that data, where it is, who should have access to it, and therefore who should have access to derived insights on that data, I think is the second challenge we're going to see. The final challenge, security and privacy. Once again, another hot topic we'll see today. Understanding the implications of consumer products like Bard or ChatGPT versus their enterprise versions, where a customer, a constituent, a government agency, an educational institution can say, this is my data. I have my controls around it regarding what goes into it, who has access to that data, who has access to the logs, and who has access to the outcomes of that and the responses. So I would say that's going to be the third most important one. Looking at that security, that privacy, how do I protect my data? How does everybody using this technology protect the data of their constituents, their students, their learners, their educators, their faculty, and their employees? Would be the three places that I think we're going to see the most challenges and that are really the hottest topics regarding this right now and the adoption of these exciting technologies. I'll pass it back to you, Seamak.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we will get back to those challenges again. So, Karthik, in your role supporting state and local agencies, what are some of these specific risks or concerns that need to be addressed when modernizing data lakes and data warehouses with these tools, capabilities on specifically cloud services? Please.
Yeah, great question, Srimak. So, when modernizing data lakes and data warehouses with generative AI capabilities on cloud services, there are several risks and concerns that needs to be reviewed. The primary one that comes to mind is the skill gap, which is a huge issue for the state and local agencies because the state and local agencies currently have a lot of resources that are really amazing at in supporting the different citizen servicing applications and internal applications. So they have to kind of like need to get enabled and trained upon this new and emerging technology which is generative AI, so that they have the adequate and required skills for adopting this new generative AI technologies and understand the AI concepts that can help them solve the citizen problems. One immediate solution that state and local agencies can use is hiring the experts in this space. So we have Google, that is an expert in the space. We have ChatGPT. So there are like different experts in this space that are doing some really great stuff that can actually fill this immediate gap. And another issue that comes to mind that even Trevor touched on a little bit is on the compliance on and the ethical principles that needs to be reviewed by the state and local agencies. From a compliance front, most of the state and local agencies deal with personally identifiable information. So when implementing this technologies, it's really important to set that clear guidelines on how the data would be used and who should use that data and how I'm going to secure that entire environment to control the uh, information exchange so that the state and local agencies can essentially protect the data at all times. From an ethical front, though, it's very important to review the generative AI models that are trained on uh, trained on. So basically, if the inherent data, to Trevor's point, has biases, then the outputs that we would be generating out of the generative AI models may reflect those biases, which can lead to unfair outcomes. So that's a big issue that we would like to uh, bring it to your all attention. And we can use the generative AI models to essentially make sure that there is always policies in place that are going to review those issues and the inherent biases and protect the uh, outcomes that the citizens would be deriving from this generative AI models. And another key issue that they would run into while doing so would be uh, the content might be an intellectual property for a different company or whatever is getting used. So we need to make sure that we at all times we are protecting the citizen information and using the right resources through which we are able to leverage this generative AI technologies. So we do not expose any sensitive or private information of the citizens, and we always protect their citizen data. Over
Thank
to
you.
you, CMAC.
Yeah, thank you so much. We heard from two Googlers opinions and point of view. Now I'm gonna ask you a question, Jameson. You, as a founder and CEO of an AI company specializing in NLP, natural language processing, what do you see as the most exciting opportunities for these tools, BART, ChatGPTs, or similar tools in this field, and how can they actually contribute to solving real world challenges?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely the most exciting time of that I've been in as a founder of this company. You know, it wasn't very long ago where the beginning of every one of my conversations started with sort of like an in-depth Q&A on what is NLP, and now it's sort of like rolls off of everyone's tongue, and people are reaching out because they're interested in implementing, which is fantastic. And I think that the level up that we see with the very large language models at OpenAI and Google have really moved things forward in transformative ways. And I think there's some immediate benefits, and then there's some near-term benefits that both have me excited. I mean, right now, we're already sort of anybody who's been using this for the past several months will realize that we now have a much more efficient way of consuming information, right? Like, this is changing the face of the way we reach out to the broader internet, which used to be the quote unquote 10 blue links that the folks at Google have brought us, and that really changed things when it came out. But now the amount of work that it takes to get a summarization of information around a topic is, at least 10%, if not less than that of what it used to be, right? So this does a couple of things that I'm seeing people make really great use of it right now, and we do internally as well, and I encourage everybody to do it. First and foremost is, I think everybody underestimates when you're going about ideation or research of some kind. There is significant inefficiency just dealing with the blank page problem. And I've found these large language models to do an amazing job at just taking that away. Any topic that you're diving into to get started, you just start with a quick chat, and you come back with some very nice information that's a launch point. And I find that those kind of research endeavors, or if I need to draft something, happens dramatically faster. And the other benefit of this is, I think that because the ease of access to this information is so nicely packaged for you and so easy to get after so quick, it helps with the sort of reinventing the wheel problem, right? Because as soon as you if you use this as your first step of ideation, you can within 5 seconds understand what like the entirety of the internet believes is the synopsis on this thing. And so I know personally, when I get into spaces where I'm not an expert, this really helps me level set. And I do think that like on balance, this is going to bring sort of like, this is going to level up common knowledge, right? Because this habit of getting the consensus of the internet at your fingertips without having to do all of the in-depth searching and research to figure it out really helps. And I'm super excited about that. The next step from that is that this is quickly giving us new ways to interact with our technology. And one of the big things that I've seen is, friction within your interaction with your tech, especially like for us in the natural language processing space, where we were working in like customer support, things of that nature. The friction associated with the automations previously meant that you had to have a fairly sizable like automation use case. It had to be pretty valuable to kind of like warrant the lift. But I think as these tools become better and better, it's going to be easier to interact with them quickly. And that means that we can reimagine how we interact with our technology, and we can also start to like create micro automations so that we don't have to completely hand off an entire process. I think we're a bit of ways away from being able to trust the systems to do that right now. But with a human in the loop, you can use it alongside of you to automate on sort of a micro scale because it's more efficient. And I'm really excited about using that kind of like today to help bring these efficiencies about. I think you hear people talking about, a 30% productivity boost, using these tools. And, that might be a little hype cycle-ish, but I think that like the more that we can work alongside of these tools, we're going to start away on that path to really seeing a productivity boost across most knowledge work.
Thank you, Jameson. I will get back to you to discuss about the impact of these technologies on the field that you are working. I just want to ask everyone, the audience, if you have any question, you can use the Q&A area. Then you can post your questions. We will get back to those questions if there is any. So, Trevor, I will get back to you. So, could you share an example or case study with us where the application of these tools in the state, local, or educational institutes you have worked with during your time with Google and your experience that has resulted in significant positive, if there is any positive impact, positive outcomes, achievements, or improvements?
Gotcha. So what I'll do here is I'll actually talk about Google Cloud Learning Platform that we're working with many large institutions on at this point, which has really full end-to-end spectrum impact across the full learner experience. So all the way from recruiting, all the way through matriculation, and all the way beyond to continual learning throughout life. So with that being said, Google Cloud Learning Platform, where does it start? Looking to see how can an educational institution attract students, leveraging the power of Gen AI inside of infobots, inside of chatbots, and virtual agents, in order to provide answers across all questions on a website. Historically, what did this involve? It might have involved somebody saying, here are my top 10 questions, let's make sure I have the correct answers. Now, the paradigm has shifted. The paradigm has shifted to get me, based upon the content that I provide you, whether that's my website, whether that's documents, whether that's other information, get me a corpus of all of these answers, and then let me refine the things. As opposed to starting with a blank page, we're now starting with a pre-built knowledge base, and then being able to refine and fine-tune particular responses that you might want to be exact for whether it be legal reasons, clarification purposes, or just consistency purposes. So opening the door to potential students or new students from a conversational aspect is really the first part of that platform. Then moving through the student phase, having AI-powered services for personalized learning. Think of this as an AI tutor to help summarize or simplify topics, or to collaborate with, to say, hey, can you describe organic chemistry concept of carbon neutralization in different terms, and being able to get a different phrasing that might resonate better with you as a student, you as a learner. Maybe using it to create flashcards, using it to make your own study guide. Say, I, Trevor Johnson, like to learn via images. Could you provide me a 4-image summarization of this particular topic? Being able to use it to help that personalized learning journey. Being able to use it from a data perspective to understand, and maybe as an administrator within an educational institution, understand what is happening with student engagement. What has my student engagement looked like as a trend over the past 5 years? How has this impacted, or is this potentially correlated with graduation rates? What programs have I implemented that may have had impact on this? Going to the depth of being able to look at your data through human language. Jameson, as an expert in NLP, can talk about this all day in terms of NLP. But being able to type as a human, have that go to a database, write a query, get data, and then summarize it is truly life-changing for people that might not know SQL, that might not have been able to do these things in the past. So whether it's administrators, whether it's students, no matter who it is across the spectrum, truly empowering. And then finally, from an educator standpoint, a professor standpoint, potentially using this within the cloud learning platform to help draft content for courses, to help author that initially, and then provide that double check. I think human in the loop is a very large topic here, making sure that, to everyone's point, we're using this as an assistive technology, not necessarily a replacive technology. It really is a great tool, but as of right now, from my perspective, it is not here to replace. It is here to assist. It's here to help. And then finally, looking at the journey, we talked about attracting students. We talked about students, educators, faculty, thinking about when someone graduates. How can this be used for career services? Searching for jobs, understanding this is the type of job, or these are the types of things that might match best with your experience, that might work best with you, and then using it as an assistant to help maybe with modifying your resume, maybe with fine-tuning and tailoring some of the points and experience you have to truly match the job market. And very important, assistive technology again, making sure that when you say, hey, can you modify my resume to emphasize these experiences, making sure you read it afterwards to make sure there were no hallucinations and nothing that is false in the piece of paper that you're using to portray yourself to a potential employer. So with that being said, Google Cloud Learning Platforms, one of these use cases where I'm extremely excited for providing generative AI across many aspects of the full educational cycle to really provide A, an enhanced student experience, B, an enhanced experience across all faculty, staff, and administration, and then C, truly a way that somebody's life could be changed for the better by making their job easier and allowing them to focus on the true education, the true learning, and the true ability to change the world.
Yeah, good examples, Trevor. Right now we are talking, there are some new tools that you can submit your CV and the tool will look for some related job opportunities for you. And there are so many other similar applications available right now. Thank you. Karthik, I'm going to get back to you and ask you for an example too. Can you share an example where the implementation of these tools, generative AI tools, have helped drive business outcomes for these sectors, state, local, and educational institutes? What were the challenges faced, and how were they overcome, if they could do that?
Yeah, thanks again, Seema. So, the common use cases that we are seeing, state and local agencies that are looking towards generative AI, the common use cases that they would like to solve are around citizen engagement and improving the citizen experience. So during COVID, most of us have been completely enabled with the online experiences. So let's say I want to place an order on Amazon, I was able to do it in a few clicks. Similarly, let's say I want to get a new driver's license as I recently changed my address. So what state agencies are trying to do is provide a similar sort of like an experience, so wherein you can go to the state website, ask a bot, or essentially saying that, hey, I recently changed my address. How do I get my driver's license? And the bot creates a personalized experience for you and help you go through a journey to get your driver's license in a few clicks. So wherein you kind of like give the documentation that is required, prove that, hey, I live in this address. So what are the forms that needs to be collected? So everything could be digitized, and within a few clicks we are able to create that personalized experience for the citizens, and we are able to get that driver's license. So another use case that's very personal to me is providing real-time information during emergency management situations, and how we can effectively uh, plan the resources during that time. Because in the last 2 years we've been having a lot of like natural disasters like snowstorms and everything in Texas. And uh, basically when I go to the city website, it's tough for us to kind of like find the exact information that we are looking, and how do we uh, essentially get the information as to, let's say I lost my power, or I do not have gas, or I do not have water. So what should I do? So who should I reach out to? So that's where a generative AI could play a very key role. So wherein through the mayor's office we can create a simple user experience that can take the citizens on this journey to identify their key issues, and we can actually prioritize, saying that, hey, currently a bigger issue is getting electricity in this specific zip codes. Then we can actually do the prioritization and essentially have the resources deployed there and solve those problems. And the last other issue that I would like to highlight is satellite imagery and aerial photography. So if there are certain areas that were affected, so how we can use computer vision techniques and all the models to access and quantify the damage, and essentially provide real-time information to the emergency management teams to for them to effectively plan those resources. So these are few key use cases that I've been seeing, and some of the key challenges that I've seen agencies go through is the data is currently being stored in certain legacy systems. So getting that data into the modern cloud systems. So Google Cloud platform has some amazing technologies that we could help you with in that space. So wherein we can take the data from where they are and making that available, so that we can create these personalized experiences for the citizens. And second, when we are thinking about effectively planning those resources, eh, we are talking about different systems that could be third party. We need to bring the community part of the equation. So we have to bring in our partners. So whether that is the electricity department, the different boards that we have to work with. So just bringing the entire community engaged in this effort, and essentially uh, let them be part of this entire digital transformation that the state and local agency is trying to do, and how we can drive the citizen outcomes and provide a better citizen engagement, and create a experience for the citizens wherein they are able to get the information that they are looking for within a matter of few clicks, rather than spending like hours together to kind of like get to the exact information that they are looking for. So those are some experiences that we've seen. CMAC.
Thank you so much. So before I get back to Jameson, I'd like to ask everyone, please, on a sidebar on right, there are two bubbles, Q&A. Please put your questions there. There are some interesting questions from the professors and the students on the chat. So I'd like to ask everyone to move the questions to the Q&A section. So Jameson, could you provide some insights into the developments and advancement in these tools since the inception of your company in 2010? And so how have you witnessed and experienced this evolution and impact of these technologies, especially on your area?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey, right? Like if you rewind back to 2010, what the interesting thing comes back to, this is interesting and exciting, but back when this first started, like there was very little reliable tech in the machine learning NLP space. A lot of the open source algorithms were really shoddy. When you go to try to like implement an enterprise solution, we were stuck rolling our own at first to get the kind of performance that we needed, and we learned a whole lot. But since then, like there's been some great advances, and it all sort of like centers around kind of like the democratization of technology. So like since then, cloud compute and the capabilities in the cloud have just exploded in terms of the services, the hardware that you have access to. So when you talk about like high-end GPUs, like certainly a company my size would never be able to implement something like that. But when we need them, we can go access them on demand and just pay for them for a few minutes or a few hours. And it unlocks a whole world of opportunity in that space. And it's not just us, right? It's everybody. And that's where it really gets exciting, because I will tell you, in the last 2 years, especially, but this was kind of like on a growth curve. The open source community around this stuff has really come together, and it is becoming ever more powerful. And since ChatGPT came out and sort of fired the starter's pistol on this, it has gained a lot more attention. There's a lot more active development going on. And what's so exciting right now is literally like the things that we're building off of. It's a lot of open source stuff, but you have to be, there's so much happening that you have to build your platforms to be flexible enough to continually accept in the new innovations that are coming so rapidly in this space. And I think that really is going to have an enormously positive impact over the next few years as we have all kinds of new ideas. It's like at this point, like tons of entrepreneurs in this space can go from ideation to actual implementation, and it doesn't take millions of dollars anymore. In some cases, it only takes a few $1,000s if you're smart. And then that to say that like we are bumping up against some like constraints in the space, but I think that because of the volume of technologists that are engaged in this, you're going to see software optimizations. You're going to see solutions that come out that compete with NVIDIA for compute, and is going to drive the cost of compute down even further. And it's really, really exciting in terms of impact for like for an everyday person or enterprises for certain. The thing that has happened and worked for us that's exciting from a business perspective is that all this technology coming in is allowing us to sort of like move up the value chain in terms of the problems we're solving, right? So back in the day, we were attacking, maybe like menial, very repetitive customer support issues, right? It was a low value task. And to be quite frank, it worked in the government because the cost of these contact centers were maybe like 10 times what they are in the private sector if there's a global strategy around it. But you would take this stuff to the private sector, and the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze, right? From a technology perspective. But now we're able to like move up the value chain, and instead of just addressing like a password reset, you're actually able to do interesting things like provide knowledge agents that can answer specific business questions. And these are things that like can help companies deal with onboarding and attrition and can speed up their engineering cycle. And this is where there's going to be a lot of efficiency built into the system. It would have never happened if it wasn't for the fact that so many people have had access to both the hardware and software to bring this together and work together on it.
Yeah, good points. So thank you, Jamison, to share your experience with these new tools. And your insights. So I'm going to ask each one of you another question, and then there are a couple of questions from the audience and the participants. So we will get there soon. So Trevor, in your experience, how do you envision the future of these tools and this evolving, impacting to those sections? I mean, local, state, educational institutes, how they may operate and deliver services in future with the impact of these tools.
Yeah, so I would say once again, three is my number of the day, so I'm going to go through three things here. I would say the third one, personalized service. Kartik mentioned this, I think, in his initial response. Looking to see and leverage these tools to say, how can I give personalized, catered service to every constituent, every student, every learner, every educator, every employee? So being able to give faster answers in a more personalized manner, frankly, in a more human manner, understanding how the English or the Spanish or the other language semantics work, and being able to respond in a more fluid and resonating manner. Being able to give a richer experience from that perspective as well. Maybe at the end of the chat, saying, "Can you summarize this for me?" and providing a summarization instead of a full transcript, or providing both. So having that personalized service, I think, is number one. Number two, automating tasks. I think Jameson mentioned this before. How can we go from previously we could automate a lot of those low-level tasks, say, hey, help with a password reset. But I think with some of this technology, we can start expanding that a little bit more. When I say expanding that, maybe processing of paper, people that have to data entry, maybe that becomes something that's a lot easier. Customer service, there's a lot of things there where if you have somebody that has a 2,000-page manual that they have to find answers to and flip to page 800 to answer something or search something within an internal knowledge base, maybe that becomes a lot more simple with things like Agent Assist, an assistant that could help them, or maybe a virtual agent that can do that part so that the human can focus on those more creative, strategic, or pressing problems instead of having to answer the phone 200 times a day to reset a password or tell the business hours for a particular location. And then I think the final one is improved decision making. I mentioned before access to data, really promoting that equity of how can everybody now find things better, whether that's information on websites, whether that's information from manuals, from books or elsewhere, or frankly, whether that's information from data. Being able to have that equity, people that previously couldn't find things or had to call somebody on the second floor and say, hey, can you pull me a report that shows the annual graduation rates for the past 3 years? Maybe now they can literally take that ask they would have sent to somebody, put it into a computer, get an answer, and beneath that, get the attribution of where that answer came from. We got this from these tables, or we summarized this response from these locations. I think there might be some things in the chat we can address later regarding how can we make things explainable, how can we make things attributable to actual sources. So I think those are the three places I really think it's going to change, evolve, and impact: personalized service, automated tasks, and then frankly, improving decision-making, which is only going to allow us to continue to get better across these places where we're truly serving people that are learning and people that are truly in need.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Trevor. So I'm going to get back to Kartik, ask similar question from your perspective, Kartik. What are the key factors that in these sections, state, local, educational institutes, different agencies should consider when evolving the adoption of these technologies to actually to address and to deal with these unique challenges and effectively leverage of these technologies? What's your perspective?
Yeah. So for state and local agencies that are evaluating this generative AI tools to address the unique challenges that are specific to them, they should first focus on the goals that they would like to achieve with it, and identify specific objectives that we can have for each challenge that could be solved with generative AI. So the outcome that could be achieved from generative AI really depends on the data, and ensuring the underlying data do not have any sort of like biases, and how the data could be made available, and it's always like decisions are made on real time information, and how we can get access to the data and have the right expertise to leverage these AI tools. So those are some of the key challenges that I've seen. And to leverage those AI challenges, AI technologies, I recommend the state and local agencies to start with small proof of concepts that access the that access the current systems, and give us the feasibility and effectiveness of generative AI in addressing specific challenges that state and local agencies have. This can help us identify the risks for implementing those projects and identify the right challenges that can be solved with generative AI. And engaging with the right companies, whether it is Google or OpenAI, that are specialized in generative AI, that can help us solve complex challenges and avoid doing costly mistakes. And engaging with the community as well, and making them aware of how generative AI is going to be used by the state and local agency, can help us build the trust with the public, and bring awareness within the community, and making them aware of the potential risks, but highlighting the key benefits of this new and emerging technology. And generative AI could be a very powerful tool to drive efficiency and effectiveness for the state and local agencies, but carefully considering the key challenges that we wanted to solve with generative AI, we can definitely improve the citizen experiences with the state and local government. We can encourage the user feedback and have a constant feedback loop with the community to continuously improve these tools, and soliciting the feedback from the different stakeholders, whether that is citizens or partners or within the employees, understanding the impact of this technology and making it iterative. So that is going to be key, because it's not just like a once we implement it and it's done. It has to be continuously iterated to bring in the right insights and drive right suggestions to address this unique challenges that could be solved with generative AI.
Yeah, thank you. And I super agree with your comment on feedbacking from different parties. So, Jameson, your question is, I wanted to hear from you your experience with the space of NLP. What are some of the ethical considerations and potential risks associated with these tools? We know there are some concerns, real concerns from the users, from the scientists, from developers, and how we can ensure responsible and accountable usage in different industries and different perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you for this question. Responsible AI is something that is like super important to us and near and dear to my heart in terms of implementations. And there's obvious risk, and I kind of separate them into two categories. There's the risks that that lean heavily toward the data side of things, so like the bias and those sort of things that that need to be addressed from that side. But I think from my perspective, I'll talk a little bit more about the actual like technology oriented risks. And you know. So we've seen like some top, minds in the space, back away, saying they have significant concerns. We're talking about like the singularity and risks associated at that level. I'm more of a pragmatist. I think that those are things to consider in the very long term. But in the midterm and near term, the problems to me look very different. So from a midterm perspective, I think when you talk about responsible implementation, Kartik kind of like pointed at this when you talk about like iteration. It really has to do with like my concern. I joke, right? Like I think if AI in the near term is going to like bring about the apocalypse, it's going to look more like Idiocracy and less like the Terminator, right? I fear accidents much more than I fear like superhuman robots. And the reason is because there are two reasons. The technology is very complex. And the other thing is that we have rushed a lot of technology into the space. I mentioned, there's been a lot of hype. Everybody has been in a big hurry to move everything that's kind of been working its way through R&D over the past 2 years into product as sort of like a fear of missing out kind of thing. So we are at risk here of bolting together a lot of like black box automations that aren't aware of one another. And if there's one truth about all of this machine learning, it is like garbage in, garbage out to the end, right? Like, so these things will always give you a result. But when they get unexpected information, it's pretty epic what happens. And so there's risk associated with that. So, I mean, that's about guardrails. That's about like humans in the loop to prevent these things. And that's what I see as like responsible deployment from the software side of things. But there's one very, very imminent threat that I don't see people talking about as much as I would like to. So I'd like to take these opportunities to elevate it. And that has to do with our inability, our increasing inability. As these things get better, it gets harder and harder to differentiate between something that has been human generated and something that has been computer generated. And I think I saw like a Meet post, this idea of like, this is giving bad actors a way to get to inject themselves into the space in very nuanced ways and they can do it at scale in ways that were just not possible a few years ago. And the problem with this like generative, this inability to tell exactly what you're dealing with, for one, it's disorienting as a human, right? To like not exactly know. But anytime you have that kind of like disorientation, it opens us up to manipulation. And that is what I really worry about is our ability to manage this sort of disorienting and potentially manipulating activity that happens on the back of deep fakes, especially coupled with generative language AI, so that you can deep fake something and have it do and say whatever you want. It's a big risk. I think we're going to see a lot of these problems really rush to the forefront through the political campaigns of the next 18 months. And from my perspective, there's a big argument about this, but I think that the way to handle some of that really has to do with like white hat AI algorithms that are out there operating at scale with ethical motives against the AI that's out there that may be doing harm. And people will get all excited about AI battling AI, but I truly don't see another technology that can meet that at scale and actually be effective at thwarting it. So I think investment in those kind of areas and entrepreneurship in those kind of areas is going to be really helpful. The face of cybersecurity is definitely changing, and that needs to level up as well.
Thank you, Jameson. Trevor, you have something to add, I guess.
Yeah, let me add two quick things there, Jameson. So I think the first part that you said there, I think is really pivotal, talking about AI principles. I think it's very important that companies like ours, Jameson's, Google's, these people, we have our AI principles. I think we need to make sure that other implementers of this technology, each one of you, make sure you set or understand at least AI principles for them. I think that Google's AI principles, I might be a little bit biased, are super strong in terms of what we published. I believe in 2017, we published 7 different principles. I'll read my 3 favorite ones. Be socially beneficial, avoid creating or reinforcing unfair bias, and then be accountable to people are 3 of the 7 that I find very important. But going through those and making sure you pivot all the things that you leverage these types of technologies or any technology to follow these sorts of things, I think is super important. So please, I challenge each one of you, think about these things when you do any sort of project.
Yeah,
and then the last thing you mentioned there as well, Jameson, looking at how this technology will change when we talk about deepfakes or things such as that. I think there's a challenge right now to every large technology company in the world to try to collaborate on this. I know that Google at Google's I/O conference mentioned a few things regarding when things are generated by generative AI, some sort of meta tagging or some sort of standards to implement that. I think there are pushes in that direction at this point. Frankly, I don't know if we're there yet, but I know that there are definitely thoughts around that, but definitely a hot topic and something that I think everyone on this call should be keeping their eyes on.
Thank you so much. Jameson, any comment on Trevor's?
No, I'm in full agreement. You know, there are some really, I think there's some really great ideas out there in terms of like how we can just use existing technology to help disclose this kind of thing. And clearly, you know, that sets a very good precedent on the like the responsible community, like I would say like the responsible actors in the space. It's just going to require and to your point, Trevor, I think it is incumbent on all of the responsible actors in the place to work against anybody who's sort of like outside that realm of ethics that we all agree is right. The one thing I will add too is that I think that you know, regulation around this, I'm really challenging everybody because I'm really torn about the regulation. I hesitate to sort of delegate that responsibility to regulators because in practice that has worked horribly slowly and poorly in my estimation in the past. And now that our systems are acting more human, I think it's absolutely appropriate. And I push all of our legislators to start thinking this way, and hopefully in our legal system to start making legal judgments this way. I do think it's time for us to hold technology companies and the technology that they're deploying accountable in the same way that we hold humans accountable. And I think that there's a lot of existing statute that we apply to how we agree to behave as humans that should also apply to how we agree to behave with our software. And so some of the things that like rolled back controls around social media and things like that, I don't want to see that happen again with the AI movement. And I think it is appropriate for companies and the software and the people involved in the delivery of that software to be acting within the realms of our existing law.
Thank you so much. So we have several questions on the Q&A section. So I'm gonna ask these questions, and if any of you are interested, it's not needed to all of you answer or address this or put a comment on these questions, but if any of you are interested, please comment on these questions. And if we have more time at the end, there are some other couple of questions in the chat as well, so we're gonna get there too. So Eric said that I agree that he's a tremendous tool for use as a launching pad during ideation, though I have seen examples where some of the response has inaccuracies which warrant some type of a reality check. So it's not a question, it's a comment. If any of you wanted to put a comment.
It's actually what we're developing software around right now is getting after this, right? This is something that we've done in the past with other types of algorithms, but the transformers and the neural nets are especially difficult to manage this around. And so there's a lot of people working on this, right? There's a lot of ideas. Some are our approach is we're rolling out pragmatic solutions that may not be perfect, but are better than nothing, and iterating on those to improve them over time.
There's a question here from Jisoo. Why explainable portion of the AI is important, and what do you think is the reason Bard or ChatGPT products as such do not do a good job in this space? What could be the reason? Trevor, do you want to say something?
Take that one, Trevor.
Yeah, I'll start on this one. So I'm sure this will be a discussion. I think it's due to the complexity of the underlying technology. To be frank, when you train something on billions of parameters and this large corpus of data, saying that, oh, I got one idea from page 12 2 ideas from here, 42 ideas from here. It's hard to explain from that portion. So I think there's some complexity to it. What I would challenge though, and what I would say is I would say part of this also is user education. Maybe putting inside of your prompt, please provide me where you receive this, or please provide the 5 links that were most crucial in developing this. And I think there are ways that you could prompt engineer to get some attribution. I can tell you that there are efforts right now to have attribution in the responses to do this automatically from that perspective. But I would say there are also manual ways that you can start to say, okay, I want to understand where this came from and have that curiosity to get that information as well. Because if you ask for it, or sorry, if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. So I think that that's one aspect I really like to call out in this topic as well.
Nicely done, Trevor, as Google is better at that than their competitors.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you said it.
Okay, so there's another question. I think Karthik may be able to address that. So GPT-4 prompt has a limited input length. So feeding AI, the source information is limited. How do you input an expensive corpus of information and data factor into GPT response?
Yeah, I think that's a key problem that all of us would have as well. So few approaches that we could think about are around like segmentation. So if the data is too large, then could we segment that data to a specific input for the generative AI model? Or if we wanted to kind of like create different segments to handle different interactions, so that's one way to think about it. The other and key way that I've seen a lot of people do is on the summarization front. So wherein instead of inputting the entire corpus, we could use different techniques like text summarization to extract the specific information from the entire information of the data that you wanted to process, and that can give them the appropriate information that they would like to get out of the generative AI model. So those are some of the key approaches that I've seen. Obviously, this space is completely evolving. So as progress is being made, I think those limitations do kind of like be overcome. But currently, those are some approaches that I've used at least to kind of like solve that.
And I'd add to that too. There's really interesting technology coming online with pre-trained micro LLMs in this space that allow a lot more information in. There's some, there's some trade-off with that, right? And in terms of cost and accuracy and some of the things that they can and can't do. But the great thing, back to what I was saying before, is if you go on Hugging Face and you can't find something that fits your use case, your best bet is probably wait 7 business days and check the leaderboard again.
Thank you. So there is another question. It's about Google Cloud. I think Karthik can address that, or any if Jamison and Trevor want to say something, that would be very welcome as well. So the question is, can we have more explanations regarding how Google Cloud would protect our private data? For example, who would have access to our data and under what conditions, and will it be completely deleted after we really delete them? So that's a question. I think we can consider it as a general question, I mean, about privacy and data. Karthik.
Absolutely. And Trevor and I have actually literally talked about that same topic yesterday with a different state and local agency. So Google is very important. For us, like in the generative AI space, we want to focus on something that's called as responsible AI. So anything that we wanted to do with regards to the generative AI technology within Google Cloud, it's going to run in the customer's tenant. So we would have the base model. So whether that is Palm 2, we have Imagen, we have different AI models that Google has. So the base model would be frozen, and then we have the customer's tenant that where we would be doing all the analysis or connecting to these base models. But the information that we are going to store in the customer tenant would be only be accessible by the customer. It will not be update used to kind of like update the base model. So that is a very crucial difference, that Google Cloud is how generative AI technology is getting rolled out. And one very important fact in that is, you brought up a great point. Let's say I kind of like I delete certain information, or I do not want certain interactions to be had by the generative AI technology. So we have things like banned phrases. So those are things that we can tune the model to kind of like not have those interactions. And let's say if we kind of like want to remove those interactions, we have that complete flexibility and autonomy to kind of like remove our data, so that it no longer is going to be part of the customer's tenant. So we maintain security at all times. Yeah.
And I'll add on here quick. I mentioned before briefly, I alluded to consumer versus enterprise. I want to be very clear and draw some lines here. There are consumer products in the world right now. These consumer products include things like Bard, things like ChatGPT. I do not recommend putting private information, private data as the same as somebody putting private information into a Google search or a Bing search or a Yahoo search. Not something we recommend. We recommend what Kartik just mentioned inside of enterprise environments, such as the enterprise Google Cloud offerings for generative AI, Vertex AI, Gen App Builder, those sorts of offerings, where to Kartik's point, it's within your environment, your ecosystem. You own your data, you own your model. It can leverage the Google base model if you want, or it can just leverage your data itself to build that model in a small and efficient manner to say, you only need to know information about this College of Engineering or about this Department of Health and Human Services. Here's your information, provide responses regarding to that. It follows, in this particular case, those enterprise versions follow the cloud terms of service signed with Google Cloud, which involve data privacy, data retention, data deletion as well. So you do have all those enterprise things that are required in the enterprise offering. So please, as each one of you is moving with your enterprise or with your organization, please know that difference, and please ensure that everybody in your organization knows that difference as well, because truly we've seen many news stories, many security threats, many issues regarding this already. So please keep that in mind, consumer versus enterprise.
Thank you. Apart from this Q&A questions, there are some questions on the chat as well regarding how scary could be these tools and scams, plagiarism. So I wanted us to be able to address those questions as well. So that would be great if each one of you can address and answer the question in a very short time. Eliza asked a question. She's my student in a big data and machine learning application class. Regarding regulations and data privacy, what is the forecast of AI regulations? Who should be in charge to implement and compose AI regulations? Does the government have the knowledge on AI, or do we need a global organization focused on AI? Jamison, do you want to say something, or any of you?
I mean, I think everybody has to move forward together, but the caution that I have, right, is that expecting that we're going to get agreement, even like at best, like within nation states. When you talk about like the global organization, maybe I'm just cynical, but that feels like a sort of wasted effort. There's culturally just so many different approaches to this. I don't see it coming together in a global perspective. I think you're going to see the EU come together. I think you're going to see the US. They will definitely be leaders in the space. And to that extent, I'm all for it. Like, I think that like the discourse and the law and the statute and the precedent all needs to be out there. I do think it's going to move slow, and I think that it's incumbent on everybody that's in the industry to do the right thing. And Trevor, when you're talking about like your consumer versus enterprise too, this all comes down. There's such an element of trust with all of this, right? Like you have to be able to trust your algorithms. You have to be able to trust your providers. And so I would just encourage everybody to vote with your dollars while we get the legislation figured out, and partner with the most trustworthy organizations and people that you feel are worthy of your business.
Thank you so much. Kartik, Trevor, any comment on this specific question or Jamison's explanation? If not, we can move on the other questions.
I would say move on.
Okay, so Galen asks, how do you police the human hackers and possibly one day the AI hacker?
Well, the AI hackers are here. You don't have to say one day.
Trevor?
This is everybody.
Yeah.
Go for it, Trevor.
Yeah, I'll add some things in here. So I think to Jamison's point before, he made a reference of AI versus AI. I think some of this is existing and it's happening already. At Google, for example, you'll see security models like SecPom being released to look at some of the security aspects and look at places where things can be implemented. You'll see that deployed in some security products as well, inside of, for example, our Mandiant and Chronicle offerings. Certain places where you can say, describe the route that somebody would exploit this particular vulnerability. And it will show you, it will say, this is the route they would go through, or this is how this would work. So I think that some of these are happening now. Frankly, I think they have to continue to accelerate and continue to happen because, to Jamison's point before, if malicious actors are using these things, one of the best ways is to use the same thing against them to make sure we understand, mitigate, and resolve the risks. There is not going to be a day where people stop trying to acquire more money or stop trying to acquire fame or information. It's been in society for millions of years, and I anticipate it will continue to be in society. So I think that's going to be an ever-changing problem, and I think we just have to continue to evolve along with it.
Adding to what Trevor has said, I would like to share, I come from security background, so that's a very important question that even I had. So we have seen the explosion of different applications, different technologies. Fundamentally, though, but when you look at any application, having that strong user authentication framework, and so apologies for it. So for the other background noise, sorry about it. So
It's okay. Continue.
okay. Yeah. So
There's an AI
yeah. There is a
construct.
vehicle. Yeah. So basically, what we can do is we can prevent the unauthorized access to the generative AI systems. So only allowing the authorized individuals to interact with the models or with data is going to be extremely crucial. And one of the key and important way is to have regular audits, whether that is doing different security assessment, third-party assessments of the models to identify any potential actors or vectors that are not supposed to be in the system, and analyzing the robustness of the model as well, and just being continuously doing the security awareness training. And as the generative AI space is evolving, the security space would evolve too. So identifying what those new technologies are and what are the best practices and safe guardrails that are there. So making them part of this ecosystem, and essentially having the resources focusing on that would essentially can mitigate some of those risks.
Yeah, all of you just invited to our cybersecurity summit in October. So I'm gonna ask. Dr. Pittman. He's the lead of our ISEM program. His question is about, as instructors in the ISEM masters and PhD programs, what should the students be taught in the in this generative AI area, from your industrial perspective, can you envision the content of a course?
I have been doing something that's called as within Google Cloud Skills Boost. So we have some amazing content with generative AI. I would highly recommend all of you to kind of like start exploring that as a good first step. It's not the only step, but it's a good logical first step. And Trevor and Jameson, you might have a few other resources that you would like to share.
Jameson, do you want to go first on content?
Sure. From our perspective, the kind of work that we're doing, so data science, like machine learning fundamentals are huge, and I think it is important. There was a time there when we treated like data scientists and computer engineers as two different skill sets, and I would absolutely bring that together. All of the people that we hire are data scientists who are machine learning engineers. So they not only understand the statistical principles behind it, but they're very familiar with the different types of models that are out there, how they're implemented, the trade-offs between them, and how they're deployed, and the difference between training, deployment, inferencing, and how that works, and the considerations at each. The democratization that I talked about too before is really like leveled the playing field. So when you talk, I mean, like my devs are even very comfortable in the cloud architecture. So it's kind of like, if your machine learning engineers and data scientists need a cloud DevOps to like get themselves deployed out to the cloud, you're really going to slow down. So exposure to all of those things, it's not a heavy lift either, right? Like the folks like Google and Amazon have done an amazing job of making this, 10 times easier than it was just a few years ago. So that would be my recommendation based on like the work that we're doing.
And I would say from my side, I think there's two different dimensions to this. I would say I like to use the analogy of looking at Gen AI like the invention of the calculator. When the calculator initially came out, educational institutions, there were some that were very anti-calculator that said, hey, we don't want to do this. We think we should avoid it. It's bad. And there were others that are like, oh, hey, how do we build this in our curriculum? How do we build this to get the best outcomes? So I think we're going to see that sort of split. What do we do to enable and empower best utilization of the technology? I'd say across all student or tech and non-tech, I think we need to help and train people on prompt design, help people understand how to best leverage it, how to best ask questions. So I would say that's number one. That's not a full course. That's in general how we best leverage the tech. I would say in terms of coursework, I fully agree with Jameson. I think data is the basis of this technology. That's where I started today's talk. So really combining that data engineering, helping people to understand how to best format things underneath, and then able to format them on top in order to best get the best results. Obviously, not everybody's going to know how to program the neural network and help optimize neural networks underneath some of these, but that's where I would see kind of general level courses.
Thank you. I still receive questions from different platform, my cell phone, Microsoft team here. And so there is another question here on this Q&A section, but there are some other questions. We have 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to say something about those questions as well. The last question here is that is there an application to transfer GPT-4 business intelligence output to provide options to visualize and model results, meaning diagrams, figures, etc.? Quick answer, if there is any.
It will get there. It's not there now. For the same reason, I would say that, like, I think I saw some other questions about, like, people say things like, oh, English is the new programming language. And I'm like, yeah, maybe eventually, like, we can get there, but we're not there now. So, like, the fundamentals still matter around that stuff.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the chat and ask those questions. Professor Amjad Omar asked a question about the plagiarism. How can the plagiarism based on generative AI can be controlled or managed?
This is a big one, and this is near and dear to my heart too, because my avocation is as a musician, and so seeing creative content being ripped off is nothing new to the music community, but it still hurts every time. And I really feel for the creators out there that are being impacted by this, and I think this is one area that there's some serious ethical questions around, and this this is where there's a lot of responsibility, I think, on the large language models that are consuming the content of the internet. There does need to be ways, and I think people are. I was just at a conference for a music conference where they're lobbying for these kind of things. I know it's happening in the visual arts as well. It's really important, and I would just say that. For the same reason that we talked about before, it's hard to know exactly what the sourcing is. But we have, in the music industry, we've solved this problem a long time ago. And the idea here is that close counts. And so whether or not you have data provenance on the actual pieces of information that went into that specific generated piece of content, you can look over your training data set and approximate what percentage of what went into it. So when you think about how music royalties work, you don't know exactly how many times it was played on a radio station or in a television in a television program, but Nielsen has a sampling mechanism that has worked as a fairness distribution system for the funds that are collected. And I think that needs to be put in place immediately in order to make sure that if there is that the creators are being compensated if their information is being used to generate new material.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from Karthik and Trevor. We know that the U.S. administration and other leaders ask these generative AI tools companies to put a label or something on the outcome and the result of these tools. So what's your perspective about the plagiarism and scams and all these concerns?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts on this. So one approach is recently I graduated from one of the university as well. So we have a plagiarism software that we used to use at the college. It's called as Turnitin. It's a classic as an example of, hey, when you just plagiarize the content, it directly gives you hey, where the content was derived from. So that's a very simple technology, and that's already used by most of the universities. We might have to adopt technologies like that. So likewise, Grammarly has a plagiarism checker as well that I've used a couple of times. So there are different companies that are actually doing things like that. But one key way is going to be watermarking the work and what we share online, making sure that whether that is students or whether that is policymakers, what they share online and how the information that they shared could be plagiarized, bringing awareness within the community are things that we should be doing as well. It's not just about the technology problem, it's about how we kind of have those guardrails to protect this problem of protecting users and citizens from this problem. So
And I would say my perspective on this one, frankly, I think we all know cheating's not a new problem. Cheating and plagiarizing have, once again, also existed, just like theft and malicious actors, for a long, long time. So I think this is just a new manifestation of it. I think to Kartik's point, yes, technologies do exist to look and compare a new version, something a student or somebody submits, to something that exists elsewhere. What does not necessarily exist yet is something that takes 20 different things online, summarizes, generates, and creates something new, because it would have to follow the same path on that neural network and that transformer to actually create that. So reverse engineering that, I'm not an expert in this field. I think that's going to be a little bit difficult. So I think there might be a shift in how we look at some of these things, and we start to realize and understand from a practical perspective. Let's look at the definition of education, and let's figure out what is the end goal and outcome. Are we looking to prepare people to write a 10,000 page paper, or are we preparing them to actions like they would in enterprise world or in practical application later. So I think we might need to assess that, making sure that we still, throughout that process, have respect and cognizance of copyright, of material property, and such forth. There's been some news stories recently about paywalls and certain AI technologies going behind them. I think we need to respect all of that, but I think we also should also pause and just understand how does this affect what we're looking for and how we're preparing people for the real world.
Thank you. I think that might be the last question here. Would the demand for junior or mid-level developers decrease rapidly after the automation of software development or using these tools? What's your comment on this question? Are we losing our jobs?
Devs are definitely safe for a long time. I could tell you stories about code generators, but devs are safe for a long time. I think, the best case scenario is that everyone becomes more efficient and that junior and mid-level devs accelerate into much more highly skilled and become experienced faster using these tools. But if you want to try to build a business using a code generator, I would just say proceed proceed with caution. Your mileage is going to vary.
Yeah, one experience that I had on the space is, let's say, initially when we all started with kind of like simple traditional programming languages, and then we actually went with single model applications, and then now we have multi-modal applications. In this entire journey, we had the same concerns that people had. Like, it's just in a different way, but at the end of the day, when you look at it, from the number of software jobs that we have in 80s to today, you can see how technology has evolved, how it's pretty much like it has integrated into our entire lives. So rather than kind of like saying that, hey, we all are at risk for our jobs, I would say we all are, to Jameson's point, we will become much more efficient. So rather than kind of like having, like, say, millions of developers, we will have millions of prompt engineers in future, and that they will be doing prompt designing. There are like new and innovative fields that are going to come in, that's going to take this entire journey to the next level. And all we have to do is be cognizant of what is happening in this space and being aware of it, and making ourselves adapt to these technologies so that we are able to improve productivity at the end of the day.
That's really well said. Don't forget how far down on the adoption curve we are right now, right? So, like, if anything, like, this technology is going to increase demand for software over time. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Trevor, you have a comment?
I would echo the same thing they said. To put it in different words, I would say instead of seeing a developer go to Stack Overflow, copy something and paste it, maybe they go to codegenoverflow.com or something else. Or maybe instead of failing 99 times when trying to write a block of code, they only fail 3 times because they use code generation and then tweak and modify, coming back to that whole human in the loop, reviewing, not replacing.
Okay, I promise it will be the last question since we have 6 more minutes. So as someone in workforce development, we are seeing major increases in the scams and manipulation regarding those applying to jobs. And it's honestly, before new tech AI tools are utilized in it, it's very relevant and scary. Is that scary? So I wanted to hear from each one of you very quick response, please.
I mean, the manipulation side of things is very scary. I've seen some extremely sophisticated scams come through using some of this stuff. And when, like, I'm cynical as it comes with this stuff. So when it gives me pause, I'm like, wow, this one's going to get a bunch of people. So it's that same point. It's harder and harder as this becomes more sophisticated. It's harder and harder to tell what you're dealing with, and so that those concerns are very valid.
Okay, Karthik, how we can detect these scams and manipulations?
You're on
You're
mute.
on mute.
About that. So I would go back to Jameson's point back again. So using AI to solve that AI problem. So wherein we would be using this AI based AI that could help us with resume based screening and evaluating and giving us correlations as to, hey, these could be fraudulent actors, but it's not the only source. It is just one source. Going back to Trevor's point, having that human in the loop, so bring in the expertise and making sure that the people who verify do analyze this entire information, they are provided with accurate information and understanding applications that are going to be secure and identify data from different sources and give us the right inputs are some of the approaches that we could do. And even in the short term, we could see enhanced background checks as well. So that could kind of like help us protect some of this fraudulent actors from applying to these jobs.
The other thing I will say in the meantime, as the anti-scam tech is coming online and becoming better, one thing I would encourage if you think if there's an inkling in your mind that you're contending with a bot and not a human, one of the best things to do is respond to it in a way that's kind of unexpected or edge case, and have a couple of turns without giving it any information. And seeing what happens. And a lot of times, like, things will reveal themselves and you can see what's actually going on. But then again, I mean, you do have to be careful. You got to make sure that you're not doing anything with that system that's going to allow it to like steal any of your information or infer anything about what you're doing, because they're smart with those things too. So I guess it's just like kind of a proceed with caution. But I do that sometimes just to confirm to myself that I've got a bot on the other end and not a person.
Yeah, Trevor, your very, very quick response.
Yep. So my quick response, there's two sides to this. There's the applicant side. If we're worried about applicants being scammed with fake offers and such forth, I think we look at a lot of our consumer technologies. We look at things like Gmail. Google sees a lot of the world's traffic, the information. So there's a lot of things we have in there to say, this is coming from a potential malicious actor or somebody that many other people have marked as spam. So I think there's some responsibility on the tech companies. And then frankly, I think there's also some responsibility on the individuals. If we're talking about the organization that people are applying to, and people are applying with potentially altered or false information in their resumes, that's been a problem forever. Sure, a generative AI hallucination could say that I have 120 years of experience, but those are things that I think we'll continue to battle. I don't think we have a good answer to prevent hallucinations in things like generative resume creation right now.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I just wanted to hear everyone's point of view. But in general, I'm very positive with these developments and improvements in general. So, but that was a great conversation. Thank you, everyone. I also want to thank Patricia from our professional development programs and ISEM program, both master and PhD program for this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Karthik, Trevor, Jamison, and also the audience for the great questions and the answers from the speakers. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.